Hi guys, we're going to start the next section in chapter 2, which is absolute value. Absolute value is very similar to opposites because we are thinking about numbers in relationship to 0 on the number line. So absolute value is just about how many spaces that number is away from 0 on the number line. So for example, if I was looking at the absolute value of 6, I would think of the number line. Here would be 0, and 6 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps away from 0 on the number line, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 jumps away from 0 on the number line. The exact same thing would happen as if I'm finding the absolute value of -6. If I have a number line, here is 0. -6 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. -6 would also be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 steps away from 0 on the number line. So the absolute value of -6 is 6, and the absolute value of +6 is 6. This is just referring to how many steps away from 0 a number is away on the number line. Two examples that I like to talk about when I'm talking about absolute value is the first one is, I know you guys don't drive cars yet, but even if you drove frontwards or backwards, your car would still accumulate miles. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're going frontwards or backwards. The second example is like if you guys wear a Fitbit or you track your steps every day, it'll track my steps if I'm walking forwards. It'll also track my steps if I'm walking backwards. So if I walk backwards 5 steps, I'm still walking 5 steps from where I started. So absolute value is always going to be positive. There is one difference, and if something comes outside of the absolute value. So an example of this is the opposite of the absolute value of 6. So what you want to do is you want to read whatever comes outside of those absolute value bars before, and we talked about yesterday, that negative sign, you really want to read it as the opposite of, and then you read what's inside, the absolute value of 6. So if we think about that, absolute value is always going to be positive. Okay, that means if there was just a number inside of an absolute value, the answer is always going to be positive. So if you have this example right here, the opposite of the absolute value of 6, whatever is inside is positive. So that negative sign outside of it, or the opposite, that means that anything, if there's going to be a negative outside absolute value, the answer is always going to be negative. Okay, it is funky. So let's just dive into some examples, and you guys can see what this means. And we don't have to write a number line each time either. So first we're going to evaluate the expression. Means we're going to figure out how far are these numbers away from 0 on the number line. So A says the absolute value of 1/2. So there's nothing outside. So what we do is we take that number inside the absolute value and it stays positive. This time we're not going to write positive signs in front. It's just going to be just the number. B, the absolute value of -1.6. So if we're thinking about a number line, -1.6 is 1.6 steps to the left of 0 on the number line, but nevertheless, it is still 1.6 steps away from 0. C and D are a little bit different because they have a negative sign or an opposite outside of the absolute value. So first of all, I'm going to go over how to read this. C, you would read this as the opposite of the absolute value of 3. So you can think about this in 2 steps. You always want to solve what's inside the parentheses first, and an absolute value is a type of parentheses or a type of grouping symbol. So we want to find How many steps away is 3 from 0 on the number line? That's 3. And then what happens is the opposite or the negative comes down to join that. So that means the answer for C is -3. The same thing for D. I'm going to read it first. The opposite of the absolute value of -21. So again, absolute value first because that's type of grouping symbol. So -21 is 21 steps away from 0 on the number line. And then the opposite or the negative out front of the absolute value comes down to join it. Okay, so those are evaluating the expressions. If there's nothing outside the absolute value, my answers are positive like A and B. If there is a negative outside the absolute value like C and D, your answers are going to be negative. Okay, number 2, there's a second part to this today, and this is using mental math to solve. So what this is saying, it's saying what number or numbers can fit in place of X to make this statement true. So number 2 says, what number or numbers are 4.3 steps away from 0 on the number line? So if I was actually to draw a number line, and here is 0, well, positive 4.3 would be 4.3 steps away from 0 on the number line, but there is a second option. Negative 4.3 is also 4.3 steps away from 0 on the number line. So this answer has to have 2 answers, positive 4.3 and, sorry, I wrote a 2, negative 4.3. So you have to have both of those answers to be completely correct. Okay, C is similar, just with a whole number this time. If you need to, you can actually draw out a number line if you want to, but what number or numbers are 6 steps away from 0 on the number line? Well, mimicking A, we would have a positive answer of 6, and -6 would also be 6 steps away from 0 on the number line. The reason I skipped B is for the pure fact, if you go up to the top at your notes in number 2, you will see that the absolute value of a variable is always going to be positive. So in B, what number or numbers are -12 steps away from 0 on the number line? You might be inclined to answer -12, but it's actually not. Think about it this way. If you're walking and I just walk 12 steps in one direction, if I walk backwards, my Fitbit is not going to take those last 12 steps off my count. Even if I'm walking backwards, I'm still accumulating steps, just like your car. Even if you're backing out of your driveway or out of your parking spot, your car is still accumulating miles on it. So anytime that you have an absolute value and the answer has a negative in it, this is a no solution type of problem because you can't take away steps. You can't take away miles off of a car. If you don't want to write the words no solution, in math there's also a symbol. It's a 0 with a line through it. That symbol also means no solution. Okay, so you're evaluating like in number 1 and you're using mental math like in number 2. So let me quickly show you the practice, what you're going to be doing today. So you have 2 sections just like at the top. The first section is your evaluating section, just like numbers with A, B, and C and D. And then 11 through 20 are solving the equation, just like you did in number 2, A, B, and C. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me and we can work on this together.